pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Melvin, let the record show everyone's present on the board. Okay. We've got consent agenda. Everybody reviewed that?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion approved. Okay, scheduled sessions. Jerome Howard, Chief Flight Instructor, Rev Aviation, discussion on safety concern on the proposed wind farms in the trainer area. Jerome, how you doing?
Good, are you?
Good.
Melvin, would you?
Bring the podium.
Yeah. Oh, please, thanks.
Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Morning.
Again, my name is Jerome Howard. I'm the Chief Flight Instructor with Rev Aviation. And our concern today is the safety issue that the wind farms could pose to our practice and our training area, and our training operations. I've prepared a couple slides for you here. It's not a very lengthy presentation, but just kind of get the point across that we're trying to make with the proposed wind farm in our operations. So if we go to the next slide, please. Okay, excuse me, our training area is bounded on the west, North Iberg Avenue, which is the west side of Trainer, over to the eastern boundary, which is Griswold. To the north is Interstate 80, and to the south is Randolph, Iowa, which is just south of Melbourne. ATC, or air traffic control, usually restricts us to about 4,500 feet MSL. Basically, it's about 3,500 feet above the ground if we're talking at sea level altitudes. The minimum altitudes we can operate in those areas is right about 800 feet above ground level. So there's a little bit of a difference between the two altitudes there. And at any time during the presentation, if you have questions, please don't hesitate to speak up. The proposed wind farm area is going to be right in the middle of our operations. And I've got a slide coming up that will show you where our practice area is and where the proposed wind farm area is. The towers themselves create obstacles up to about 500 feet above ground. The top of the blade arc prevents maneuvers below, below that minimum altitude that we have. The top of the blade arc is, from what I understand, is going to be up to 800 feet above the ground at the top of that arc. Now, for us in FAA regulations, we have mandatory distances that we have to avoid obstacles at.
Thank you.
And maneuvering above the wind farm is not going to be a practical option for us. And there's also some emergency scenarios that this proposed wind farm would hinder in case of an emergency. Go to the next slide, please. About a year ago, this is the map that I received for the proposed wind farm. The highlighted area in the middle there in the square is Trainer, Iowa, and that's Highway 6 to the north, Gaston Avenue to the south, 275th to the west, 390th to the east, and Trainer is highlighted in the center. Trainer, Iowa is kind of the western boundary of our practice area, and there's a line that 275th goes north and south out of Trainer, which is our western boundary, and then from there it goes to the east, a pretty good distance. Next slide, please. Our current practice area, as you see here, and if you need a different map, I've got maps I can pass out to you if you need something else here. But our current practice area is divided into 12 different sectors. Highway 6 north of 92, Highway South, or 6 south of 96 practice areas, excuse me, north of Highway 92 and 6 to the south of Highway 92. These practice areas provide a reasonable distance from the airport for our students to travel to. So they're not spending a lot of time getting to the training area and coming back from the training area, which again saves them some money, saves some wear and tear on the aircraft, and it saves time also. There's a short egress times to the practice area, and it's ease of access into the practice area. Now, to the left of that photo there, kind of right in the middle, is the Council Bluffs Airport. And the way we get to and from these practice areas is once we depart the airport, whether we have a north departure or a south departure, the aircraft will come down to Highway 92 if we're going out to the practice area, excuse me, maintain an altitude of about 3,000 feet as defined or as assigned by air traffic control. As they get to the leading edges, if they're going into the Alpha 1, 2, or 3 or Bravo 1, 2, or 3 areas, once they get to the leading edge of the practice area, they'll make either a north or a southbound turn, get to the designated area, and then enter that particular area. If they're going further to the east, Alpha 5, 4, 5, or 6, Bravo 4, 5, or 6, they'll continue east along Highway 92, about a mile south of Highway 92, until they get to Highway 59 at that point. And then they'll make a turn to the north or to the south to enter the appropriate practice areas. Okay, next slide, please. This is the latest map that I've received of the proposed wind farm area. The pink area is outlining what have been told is the general area, what they're going to use. Now, if you can remember the map that we had prior to this, this pretty much covers the majority of our south practice areas, our Bravo areas. There is some of the proposed area that covers some of our practice areas to the north. But the majority of it is to the south and to the east. Now, the crosshatch area, I do believe, is right over Trainer, and I do believe that has been excluded from any construction of wind farms or wind towers in that area. But the majority of it in the pink, where the pink outline is where the majority of those wind towers are going to go. And it's at this point in time, it's unknown how many wind towers are going to be put in that area, and I guess that's going to be determined at a later date, and then we'll know what the effect of that's going to be for us. Next slide, please. Thank you. The impact on training for us is going to be an increase in cost for the students and the parents. And excuse me, if any of you have students that go to college, you know what the cost is for going to college. And then you add the cost of flight training on top of that, it can be pretty expensive. The hours needed for students to finish is going to increase somewhat, because if we do have to end up moving our training areas, it's going to be further distances that they're going to have to travel to and from the training areas. Another impact is negotiation of airspace with Omaha Approach. Right now, the practice areas that we have, we've negotiated with Omaha Approach for those areas, those specific areas. And then, they give us a block altitude, depending upon if they have arrivals or departures into and out of Eppley on that east side. With those block altitudes, airliners that are coming into Eppley have to remain at least a minimum of, depending upon if they're IFR or VFR, they have to remain a minimum of at least 500-foot separation between our aircraft and what's above there. So any traffic that's coming into Eppley, they usually keep them a little bit higher than that 500-foot separation, just because of wake turbulence and whatnot. You have a larger aircraft overtaking the smaller aircraft, there's going to be a significant amount of wake turbulence that the smaller aircraft is going to have to deal with. As far as obstacle clearance, we are required to remain at least 1,000 feet above any obstacle in the area, plus 500-foot horizontal within a 4 nautical mile of our flight path. So these towers will significantly have an impact on where we practice, how we practice, and whatnot. There are certain maneuvers that we do need to get down at ground level, so to speak, and practice. Some emergency procedures, some what we call ground reference maneuvers and whatnot. This will significantly impact how we perform those maneuvers. Next slide, please. In conclusion, we just want to state that it's mainly a safety concern for us. There's no one that's against renewable energy or alternative forms of energy. It's more we're coming at this from a safety issue and from a training issue for our students. It is going to increase the cost for students. It is going to increase their training times. If we have to relocate to other practice areas, there's going to be a whole nother round of talks with Omaha Approach so we can egress to coordinate with flights in and out of Eppley and whatnot. So the impact on arrivals at Eppley isn't going to be a huge factor, but if these towers are built, if these wind farms are built, and we are not able to negotiate other areas to practice in, our limits, we will have to fly at higher altitudes, which will keep inbound traffic into Eppley at higher altitudes until they get past us. And then what they call a slam dunk approach, what they say, okay, now you can descend down to whatever altitude. Again, we're coming at this from a safety issue. The flight school at Council Bluff has been established there for at least a good 25 years or more. With the current influx of students from the University of Nebraska to essentially move us to a different area could impact that. It's going to increase the training times. It's going to possibly affect our safety in that area there. So again, from a safety standpoint, this is where we're coming from. Do you have any questions?
Questions?
Jerome, about how many numbers of students do you have annually?
Annually?
Yes.
Right now, we have a total enrolled of about 300. So on an annual basis, this year, the university had 103 new students enrolled. Right now, out of that 103, we have 42 that enrolled, that came to the flight school as of August. And January, we will probably get another 30 to 35. So on an annual basis from the university, we get about 75 students a year.
Okay. And does REV operate other flight schools outside of this one at the Council Bluffs Airport?
Yes, ma'am. We also operate out of Omaha, Nebraska, out of Eppley.
And what's that practice area look like?
We do use some of the ones on the east side, and there are some to the west and to the south.
Okay. And can you tell me a little bit more about the emergency scenarios you were discussing?
Yes, ma'am. In the event that a aircraft has an emergency, engine failure, rough running engine, something like that, ice buildup on the engine, if these farms were built in our areas, it would pose a possible danger to making an emergency landing if that event were to occur, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Just to tag on what the question Susan just asked. Those students learn that in training, right?
Correct.
So it's not like it just happens when you lose power or you ice up. They do that all the time, right?
Right. Those are maneuvers that are practiced in the event that an actual emergency does happen. So it's not as if the aircraft are going up and these incidents happen all the time. These maneuvers are practiced. It's part of the training regime that is prescribed by the FAA. Yes, sir.
In your current training area, are there any obstacles that you are dealing with now, like cell towers, or is there anything like that that you have to deal with?
Yes, sir. To the north, if we could go back to, I think it's slide number, one more, right there. Okay, as you can see in Alpha 5, there's a huge tower that's just east of I forget the name of the town, Oakland, Iowa there. There's one, if you look to the north of there, there's also some other, up in Alpha 4, there's a few wind farms up there. And Alpha 2, there's there's about 4 towers there. Just east of Trainer and Alpha 1, there is I think it's a radio tower, I don't think it's a cell tower. To the south, there's not as many, but if you look down on Bravo 2, there's a few cell towers. I don't know if they're cell towers or if they're radio towers or what. There's towers down there also. In Bravo 4, just east of Red Oak, there's a couple of towers there. So there are other obstacles in the practice area that we do have to negotiate, yes.
And the number isn't sufficient enough that you have to, you
Correct.
can deal with these
Yes.
in your practice area.
Yes, correct.
You don't know the heights of some of those, do you?
Actually, the heights on those towers are listed right there on the map. So if we look at the one that's up just to the southeast of Atlantic, it is 1,500 feet above the ground. That's the number, small number in parentheses below the larger number.
Okay.
The other numbers, if you look at the smaller numbers in parentheses, it gives their height above the ground. So
Okay.
273, 370, 387, so yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah, just a couple. If with the added cost, I know this is a hypothetical, cause less students to participate in your program?
Again, hypothetically, it could, until we actually see if this did come about, we would have to see after that if that did actually cause less students to partake.
I believe we have an aviation program on campus at Iowa Western. We still have that, right?
You have an A&P mechanics program and an avionics program there, yes. The actual flight program hasn't been on the campus for several years.
Okay. Any other questions? Jerome, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you for your time.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, Andy Biller, Executive Director, Council Bluffs Airport Authority. Discussion on safety concerns on the proposed wind farm. Andy, how you doing?
Thank you. Oh, thanks, Joe. Well, thanks for the opportunity. And then I brought Garrick Sharp from the Airport Authority, and he's going to help me out a little bit. And he is our administrative manager, and he deals closely with the county when there's a permitting process that we're made aware of, and there's a discussion of any FAA involvement. So he's smarter about that than I am, so he's here to help.
Andy, will you speak up just a little bit, please?
I'd be happy to.
Thank you so much.
Because they probably can't hear you back there real well.
All right. I think Jerome did a great job. So everything he said in his presentation or answering to your questions, Airport Authority has no issues with. They're looking out for safety. They're trying to run a business, and they are addressing a need that is become very well known, and that's a shortage of pilots in the United States, if not worldwide. So it's worth thinking about. From a community point of view, a county point of view, Rev Aviation is the largest employer on the Council Bluffs Airport by a long shot. We're very proud of our Iowa Western program. They've got dozens and dozens of students, but they have a much smaller employee base, but very important to us. The Airport Authority has employees, but much smaller. So pilots, mechanics, refuelers, we call them linemen, line people, administrative staff, big impact. I've flown for 40 years. I was a flight instructor at one time. It's nothing like it used to be. I used to train at Epley Airfield. We'd have a few airplanes. We'd fly some hours. It was important. But in this operation, they have dozens of aircraft. If you haven't seen it, my fault, we need to welcome you out to the airport. They will pull out as many as 24 airplanes on the apron at one time, because throughout the day, they're going to be flying multiple flights with students, typically 2-hour blocks. It's really quite something to see, because it's on the even hour, and it's shortly after that, and they all taxi out together often, or so it appears, and then eventually take off. Then the practice area comes into play. Now you think about that from an ATC point of view, air traffic control, and it's out of approach control down in Norfolk.
Correct.
Okay, so they're bringing in all that traffic to Eppley Airfield, and then here comes maybe a dozen, maybe a little less, not all 24. I'm not going to make the point they're all up at the same time, but here they come. And because of the coordination between Rev and approach control, all these aircraft have what are called discrete codes for their transponders, which is how radar sees them. So here comes a specific airplane, and it has an M number, but they know which airplane it is because they've got a list of them there. Plus, he showed the boxes, and you see the lines, but it's kind of like an ant trail. You know, they're off, and they have a way to go, and they follow each other, and they go into their box, and they work, and then they come out. So there's a separation of activity, separation of aircraft. That's the key. Keep airplanes apart. Now, we all as pilots have a responsibility to see and avoid. But when you got a student in one seat and an instructor in another seat, and the instructor, of course, is the main pilot at that point, and we're training, that's a lot to keep track of. So to the extent that they can have that separation of traffic, that's very important. And they'll always continue that. So it works very well. It's an activity that you would probably not find at a lot of smaller airports around the state or the country, but we're part of a major metropolitan area, obviously. And so that brings us this activity. So we support what they're talking about. We appreciate their focus on safety, and we appreciate you taking their needs into consideration. A component that isn't being addressed, but I suspect they'd be very adamant about it, would be ag aviation. We aren't a prime airport for ag aviation because of our traffic in part and our relationship to the metro area. But as the main airport in Pottawatomie County, we see them in the ag season. And while it isn't super compatible with all of our activity, well, it's a public airport, and Pottawatomie County's heavy ag, so we make it work. They don't fly very high. So I just have to believe if they were here, I don't know that they are, but if they were here, they would look at their fields and they would say, wow, this is going to look like a pinball machine out there as they navigate around. Now, I suspect that's happening elsewhere. I'm not an expert, so maybe there's something to be said, but I have to believe that it'll be an impact for ag aviation in the county, in that area. Just something to think about. So we talked about the number of airplanes. He talked about the number of students. I translate that into hours. I'm going to say 15,000 hours a year. Am I okay on that?
Yeah.
Okay, so 15,000 hours a year. No matter how you slice and dice that, that's a lot of air flying. And compared to other types of aviation, it's all in a fairly tight proximity. I mean, they're not going, for the large part, elsewhere. They're going up, traveling, and coming back. So that's a lot of flight hours. Probably about 100,000 gallons of fuel a year. Not that that's relative, but just to give you a little metric there. From the airport's perspective, we have a board of directors like yourself. There's 7 members. You participate in our meetings, and they have they're our overriding governing source. And so we won't take a position one way or another without their involvement. And we haven't, other than Jeff's brought it up at some meetings, so we are aware, they haven't taken a position on it. A key part of that, and I believe you received the hazard ordinance that the city county have, that's a very important thing to us. And we'd like to thank the county for being very respectful of that hazard ordinance. So what that amounts to is when there's construction relative to aviation and the effect on the airspace, the FAA goes through a process. So I'm going to stop for just a minute, and I'm going to let Garrett talk about that, not only for this purpose, because when I talk about the airport authority taking a position, we really wouldn't be able to be highly accurate unless we had the benefits of that study. And I don't know that it would have occurred yet. Do you mind,
Oh, go ahead.
Eric?
I'll do my best. So we have a protected zone. He's got a map right here. Anything that lands in that zone, whether it's a shed or if it was a skyscraper, a tower, or whatever, we're either going to get a call to help them do that study, or they're going to go and do the study themselves. What the FAA is really going to do is they take 6 to 8 weeks to go through it, even if it's a shed. They're going to come up with a determination, and they're going to say it's either going to cause a hazard to our airport, or Epley for that matter, or it's not. And at that point, they don't tell you you can't build it. They're just going to tell you that it's going to affect the airport negatively. In which case, we have approaches that we want to protect. They would raise our minimums, which would affect training, would affect corporate traffic, any other traffic that would come into the airport. And that's about it.
Yeah, it's important. It's a process we follow. If you've talked to me about this before, I probably told you about a scenario, an example in Carroll, Iowa, where ag elevator went up in close proximity to the airport. They had a county permit, but they didn't follow the proper process and went to the Iowa Supreme Court, and the elevator ended up coming down. And the problem was the FAA didn't disallow it. They didn't approve it. They simply go through their process and then tell you if there's a hazard there. Then if you build it, they raise your airport minimums. And so from the airport, and I don't know that this scenario is going to create that outcome. It's far from the airport. So please keep that in mind. But from an official point of view, we don't know till we get the results. So that'll be important wherever that comes up in the process. One of the, just kind of on the side, yeah, when you mentioned shed, it made me think about one of the issues we have, and we've been working on, we've talked with the county, and I think it's working okay, but when the property owner comes to the county and asks for a permit, they're often ready to go. I mean, they've got materials maybe on site, and all of a sudden they get this message, okay, but you have FAA approval, which it isn't, but it's important, the process. And that's frustrating for them. Garrick is the one that takes the call. We can't provide the information into the system, it's computerized, but he'll sit there and talk through the property owner in the county so they can do it, or the contractor. But then they have to wait for the results. So we haven't quite figured out how to get out ahead of that so people know before they're ready to build, because it is very frustrating for them, and we know that. But we try to minimize it as much as possible. So that's that. We're about done. Just quickly, when it comes to your policies regarding renewable energy or generation of that and use of it in the county, however it's looked at, the airport is interested. We're very much in favor of renewable energy. Aviation, we think, will be on a leading edge of that. It's exciting to go to the conferences and hear what's going on. So here's where it might impact Potawatomi County. Oddly enough, most people don't believe it, we're aware of many airports that have FAA-approved solar generation on the airport. And people would just think, wow, how can that be? But it can. First of all, it's not very tall. And second of all, it's very compatible with the surrounding acres on the airport. So Council Bluffs Airport has about 1,600 acres. I'm sorry, 600 acres. 14 less because the county bought 14 acres to build your new secondary roads facility on, which is wonderful because it was never going to be used from an aeronautical nature. But other than that, we're not allowed to sell property. We have to have most of it in order to protect our approaches in our airspace. But we also have to pay for the airport, which we use aeronautical revenue for in part, so that's like activity like Rev Aviation, but also non-aeronautical revenue. So the land that's compatible for farming, we went to a farmer, and they do a great job. And they pay the going rate, which is $200-300 an acre typically. But these airports that have these solar farms in the field, and the FAA has lots of guidance on how this is done, well, they get more value out of that ground. We don't know if it's feasible. We just know it can be done. We think somewhere down the road at the airport should probably take a look at that. So to the extent that you make any policy relative to that activity, and we have an opportunity to have some input, we'd like to have some input in that. The other thing that just very quickly, but it's coming faster, is what's called SAF, Sustainable Aviation Fuel. And the advantage to Iowa in part is they use agricultural products. And because airplanes, there'll be a few that are electric, but none of the commercial airliners. But they want to lower their carbon footprint, and they're doing it through SAF. But we think there's an opportunity for the Council Bluffs Airport with some future facility planning to actually have SAF represented at the airport. Maybe even easier than some of our other airports in the metro area. So we're interested in renewables. We want to be supportive and participate. So as it relates to any of your activity in the future, we just ask that you keep that in mind.
Andy, I'm glad you brought up the solar, because that was a question I was going to ask you about. The ordinance that we're considering adopting changes to or adopting includes a solar ordinance as well. I don't know whether you've reviewed it yet, but it's part of this overall ordinance that we're looking at.
Okay.
So we need to get you a draft of that.
Particularly to the extent that it would limit or not allow or things of that nature. And again, I'm not saying that we're a good candidate for it, but oddly enough, airports are quite suitable for it if all the other factors line up.
Good. Other questions?
No, you bring up a good point, Susan. We'll make sure that you get a copy of the proposed solar ordinance so you can take a look at it and possibly make some comments on it. I think that's important. Matt, would you make sure he gets that?
Andy, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, both of you. Appreciate that. Okay. Next up, John Rasmussen, engineer, discussion and/or decision to approve and authorize board to sign resolution number 72 2023 to add stop sign on Overland Trail at the Cardinal Lane intersection. John?
Sure. In your packet should be a resolution for the stop sign. Having some trouble navigating the intersection. It's a three-lane intersection.
So does it stop Overland Trail?
We're gonna stop Overland Trail, I guess. So it's a,
Why is that? I was looking at Google Maps this morning and there wasn't any map included in this, so I haven't had a chance to go out and drive the intersection. But it seems like Cardinal is, what I saw on Google Maps was a dead-end road. So it made no sense to me to stop Overland Trail.
the northbound traffic on Overland Trail seems to be cutting the corner off, so they don't stop, then they cut it short, and they're kind of stopping the people eastbound on Cardinal as well. So it's trying to keep those people in their lanes because they're just trying to navigate the intersection too fast. That's part of the problem. I agree with you. The Cardinal Lane on the dead end probably has the least amount of traffic, but that northbound traffic's cutting off that intersection. And it's, if you've ever been to Neola and by the gas station out there, it's the same thing. We have a through road that stops, and we have the road teeing in that doesn't, and it's confusing for people, I guess, or they try to go too fast. They can't stay in their lanes.
But it wasn't driven by any type of incidents then?
No, we had several complaints out there.
Okay.
Complaints are the eastbound people on Cardinal, just the people coming from the south. They're on the right, so they should yield, and they're not necessarily yielding.
I
Should
need
be
to read the
yielding.
resolution.
Do you have traffic counts on that road? Or?
Yeah, we have counts. I don't have them available to me right now.
I've driven it a number of times. I don't have any issues with it. It is a T intersection. Someone should stop. So I agree with you on that, John. And with that, Chairman Shea, I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 70, 2022, or 72, 2023.
Okay, thank you.
I'll second that.
Okay,
I
got
just,
a motion and a second to approve. Melvin, will you do a roll call, please?
Sure, Chairman Shea,
Aye.
Supervisors Belt,
Aye.
Wickman.
Aye.
Miller.
I, based upon John's recommendation.
Jorgensen.
Aye.
Motion carried. Okay, next one, approve and authorize board to sign resolution 73-2023 to add north and southbound stop signs at Juniper Avenue intersection. John?
This one's on 240th. Have that description very well. Juniper currently stops. They're coming up a steep hill and people are having troubles crawling out of there as the road's getting busier. They can't see to the north, so we're gonna stop all the traffic because there's some sight distance issues there. They're not getting through the intersection fast enough and had some close calls there. So.
Okay.
Will they be able to start again if they're stopped on a hill?
They've been doing that part for years. They can't see over the hill to the north of them very well, so they're pulling out in front of the through traffic currently. So we'll have to put a stop ahead sign and a stop sign just to get their speeds down, I guess, to get to the intersection. There's kind of a business located out there, and it's just gotten busier on those roads.
Okay, questions? Or whether make a motion?
I'll make the motion that we approve the resolution 73-2023 by stop sign Juniper Avenue intersection,
Got a
based on
motion?
John's recommendation.
This is a four-way stop now then, right?
Yes.
Second.
Well, it says in the resolution, there are currently no stop signs controlling this traffic.
Yeah.
On 240th. There's stop signs on Juniper already. There wasn't any on 240th.
It says currently no stop signs controlling traffic at the intersection, which that isn't correct. Right?
We better bring that one back.
So you're gonna make it a four-way stop.
Yes.
And then-
Could you
then-
amend
then
the
down below in the
resolution
next
to add
line,
that?
it does,
Recognize a four-way stop condition.
you know.
I got a motion and a second to approve resolution 73-2023.
So do we need to amend the resolution?
I can edit that and bring it back next week.
Okay.
That's a good idea.
Okay, we'll table that then.
Yeah,
Okay. You withdraw your motion?
yeah.
Jeff?
My second.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, John. Okay, I've got one more here. Number 3, approve and authorize board chairman to sign pre-construction agreement for L55 interstate overpass with the Iowa DOT.
Okay, so the approaches on the bridge over the interstate belong to the DOT, even though it's a county road. So they're gonna replace those approaches. When they replace those approaches, they're gonna close that bridge. They're gonna keep the ramps open, but that crossing will be closed during construction because it's all too close to the ramps to get traffic control set up. So they're gonna replace the approaches, close the bridge.
How's the bridge?
The bridge is fine. It's pretty disruptive to traffic to lose that Neola. So that's at Neola there by the gas station off the interstate.
When are they looking to start this?
I think it's this coming season.
Okay, okay. Just wondered if it was,
How long will that take?
I can't guess the length of my own projects, much less somebody else's, I guess.
Okay, so have you met with Neola City Council or they,
Yeah, I'll pass it along if the DOT hasn't. So, I mean, it's not a county project, but they're getting an agreement to close our road because it's their infrastructure. It's kind of an odd situation, but yeah, I'll let City of Neola know.
what would be their bypass option then?
Go out to 880.
The detour would be up the interstate to the next exit, turn around and come back to the other side. So, pretty significant detour.
Yeah, okay, we better let as many people know as we can.
I agree, Scott. John, can we make sure that we contact Underwood, Neola, Minden, all of those cities, because that could affect all of them.
Well, how much traffic will try to get off at Underwood and get tied up in that construction?
I don't think those projects shouldn't overlap.
They shouldn't. Okay.
Did you get that? You're awesome.
This shouldn't be a crazy amount of time for just the approaches.
No, it shouldn't. It goes pretty fast.
It's the railroad though.
Yeah,
I'll make that motion.
okay.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve this pre-construction agreement. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Number 4, approve and authorize chairman to sign railroad crossing safety improvement for Burlington Northern Santa Fe crossing on 192nd Street, which is L31.
So this would be, I guess you guys know where 192nd Street is. There's a Burlington Northern crossing. Burlington Northern is applying for a safety grant to install arms and cross lights. The cost of the county will be 10% if they are successful in their applications.
That's getting busier and busier down
It's
there.
getting busier and busier. 10% is a good cost for safety.
What's usual costs on that, John? Do you have any idea?
You know, I haven't done one for 5 or 6 years, so after inflation, it's probably pretty crazy.
Why do they want us to fund that at 10%?
10%?
Yeah, so 80% would come from federal funds, 10% for the railroad, and they want us to pay the other 10. So they're splitting the cost, just so we're both owners there.
Has there been some incidents there? Is that what the?
I don't recall any there. I mean, we've had incidents around the county
Right.
with and without lights, I guess.
Yeah, it would be nice to have them all with lights and crossings.
Maybe I'm not reading it right. I think it's Exhibit C. And it says that the state is funding 90% and Burlington National, or their railroad is funding 10%. For the signal work only. Where's the page that says that the county's paying 10%?
I don't have the agreement in front of me here. My understanding it was 80, 10, and 10.
80, 10, and 10?
Yeah. See the 90, 10?
Yeah. Is this time sensitive, John?
No, I can double check that one too.
Could you do that?
I see it, Susan. What do you want to do on this?
Bring it back.
You print that out for us, John?
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
And if I overlooked it, call me and explain to me what I missed, so,
Okay.
thank you.
Well, that says it right there. Okay, next up, Jana Lemrick, Director of Human Resources, and/or Jeff Franco, Deputy Director, Conservation. Discussion on the decision to approve revised job description and pay for the position of Hospitality Guest Service Lead at Mount Crescent. Good morning.
Good morning. What you have there is a revised job description that was the front office manager. We have not filled that front office manager position, well, sort of. Angie is taking over a lot of those duties, but we've identified that we do need to have a lead position. We have a lead position in the other areas, rental, kitchen, and so we really do need a lead in this position. So we're changing the job description from the manager to the hospitality and guest services lead and making the pay to match our other lead positions, which is $16 to $18 an hour. And so the primary changes in the job description is just using the word assist instead of being the primary one in charge of these duties.
So move.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve the revised job description and pay for position at Hospitality and Guest Services Lead at Mount Crescent. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Okay, our committee appointments. Anybody got any last week? It was a short week. I think there was a lot of committees that were not doing anything.
I don't have anything to report.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to public comments. Anybody signed up?
Matthew, don't tell me. I had it down last week. Spaka, Benicia.
Yep, yeah, right on.
You've had that your whole life,
I
haven't you?
have read it, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, you should see my pro uniform, it curls down like this.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Before we start this, let me read this. Now begins the public comment portion of the agenda. In an effort to protect the privacy of individuals and reduce the potential broadcasting of defamatory and/or confidential information, our live broadcast will now end. Information regarding public comments and public comment